Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 143, crazy number there, of the On Purpose podcast. Man, we're blessed to have you here. We hope you had a fantastic holiday season, whatever it is you celebrate, and that you listened to last week's episode, Heart of a Champion, featuring Austin Jones, one of my good friends and someone whose story is definitely inspiring. And I hope you got some good nuggets out of his. If you haven't listened to it yet, you better go back and listen to it. Like, we don't bring these guys on for you to skip over them. Everybody's story has purpose and lessons to be learned and shared, and certainly there's plenty in Austin's story. So if you didn't get that because you missed it in the holiday hustle and bustle, do yourself a favor, go back and listen to that one. And we're back, man. Andrea and I spent the month of December in Costa Rica. So I want to talk today about 5 lessons we learned from our month down there. And not where to eat, what sights to see, but genuine life lessons that we picked up interacting with the folks we were able to share time with down there. So, in full disclosure, we stayed in Airbnbs, so we did not do any resorts. We've done those in the past. I'm not knocking resorts, but Andrea, when she booked the trip, really wanted to put us in communities. So we did Airbnbs and local communities throughout Costa Rica. And many of my friends told me you would not have to speak Spanish at all. But then I suddenly realized when I was down there that wasn't true for us. So thankfully I had been taking some Spanish online classes, and I knew just enough to communicate and get through things, but definitely not as much as I would have liked to really, be able to talk to little kids and communicate on a deeper level. So that's something on my to-do list in 2022, is to continue my Spanish lessons. So if we do go back to Costa Rica, I'm a little better at communicating. It was fun, man. I tell you what, if you've not been to Costa Rica, but you love nature and animals, and if you watch like Survivor or Lost or any of those shows where it feels like they're on a far-off planet, like Costa Rica is your spot. We saw so much amazing wildlife down there. On one of our hikes, we actually ran across 2 trees that had 6 sloths in them. One of the sloths had a baby on it, and we just sat there at least for an hour or so just watching them, realizing that's one of the only places in the world that you could see that kind of activity. So if you're up for travel and you haven't been, I highly, highly recommend it. And for us, our month, I would say, is about a minimum amount of time. We would have liked to stay longer, but it allowed us to experience, the hustle and bustle of San Jose, the big city of over 2 million people, to a small town of Tinas, where we enjoyed the mountain views of volcanoes and coffee farms. Then we went down to the Osa Peninsula, which is completely remote and off-grid living. It is about as pure Costa Rica as you can get. And then we went to the surf side of Costa Rica to a town called Dominical, and finished up on the Caribbean side, which basically felt like you were kind of in Jamaica. But it is one of the only areas sloths were in, so that's why we went there, and Puerto Viejo Limon. So if you're on the maps, pull it up, look and see where we were. But those are places we went, and they were certainly awesome. And I love like the food and the culture, but the lessons I really learned came from the people. So I want to dive into those with you today. 5 lessons that we learned from a month of living in Costa Rica. The first one I start with is Costa Ricans refer to themselves as ticos, not derogatorily. That's just what they call themselves. And they're a hardworking, physically fit community that really does something interesting that we don't have much of in the States, and that's that they're very much centered on a local concept. In the little towns we were in, the grocery stores were called co-ops, and they were literally local farmers and ranchers brought their products there to sell. So it wasn't a Walmart or a big chain grocery store. It was literally you were buying stuff that was grown in the soil right near you. by the people that live in your town. And it was really fun to see that you were supporting the family farm and that you were helping encourage their way of life, and giving them success, So we really enjoyed that. You really got to know that local feel. They walk everywhere. A lot of them didn't have cars, or if they did, they didn't travel very far. So that helped, with the fitness. And one of the things I really liked about the walking is the community. They're very proud of their communities. If you go to the store, almost everything it'll have a tag if it's imported out of Costa Rica. Otherwise, it'll tell you it's made in Costa Rica. And there was just something to be said for that pride in your product and what you create. And it really got me thinking, and here in the United States, how much we don't create anything. We literally consume and consume and consume, but most of our products come from other places. So that was one of the first things I learned is to be more purposeful in locality. And as Andrea and I get to travel the country now, really hitting up the local farmers markets and maybe paying a little more, going out of our way to find them, but buying the produce that's grown where we're at, so that we assure it's the highest nutritional value, it's not traveling great lengths, and it's supporting the local people right there in your community. The second lesson I learned was one of my favorites, and that is traffic is traffic no matter where you are. San Jose is 2 million people. It is no joke. One of the cool things about Costa Rica, if you're into just randomness, they don't have street names or addresses. So if you're going places, you got to know where you're going, because there's no names or street signs that's going to tell you which way to go. So we had mapped everything out. We got to San Jose, long time through customs. We get our rental car, and in our map, our first house was 18 miles from the airport. So United States, 18 miles is maybe a half hour, 40 minutes with traffic. In Costa Rica, it was over an hour. And that took us by surprise. So we jump in the car and we get ready to go out in the street, and it's bumper to bumper traffic. Everybody's right up on each other, and everybody's honking. But it's not American-style honking. The kind of style I'm talking about where you lay on the horn, honk, and it's a long honk, and as soon as you're done, you're flipping them off, or you're cussing them out, calling them names, and then you're cutting them off, or you're brake checking them, or the angry behavior. It was a beep, beep, all the time. Beep, 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 beep. And what they were actually honking at you for was to let you know they were going to let you into traffic. And then you would beep, beep them back to say thanks. And it was pretty amazing. Not so much the first night because we were a little stressed, but all the other nights we drove, how quick you pick up the courtesy of beep, beep, let somebody in, they beep, beep, wave to you. And the traffic was so packed, you could literally have conversations with the dude next to you. There was times where we'd beep, beep, and somebody would come in, and literally you'd be sitting window to window and be like, gracias, amigo. And you could literally, if I knew more, I could have had great conversations with people just sitting in my car in traffic jams. And what I loved about this was they accepted traffic jams as kind of just something you put up with if you choose to live in these places. They weren't angry. They weren't in a rush. They were nice. They waved, beep, 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 beep. That's all you heard. The people on the motorcycles weaved in and out of the center lanes. Nobody was yelling at them. Nobody was mad at them. It was just kind of a benefit to being on a motorcycle. The businesses right up on the roads, they had the music playing. The foot traffic, the restaurants was jumping in and out of traffic. Like it almost felt like traffic jams were kind of like a street festival, if you will. And I looked at that and I thought, man, like I couldn't help but not be angry. Like I was literally like, okay, this is how it is. Beep, beep, let somebody in. Beep, beep, they let me in. We just go. Takes forever, but you eventually get there. And I kept contrasting that to how we approach that here in the States and much of the West, is certainly in Europe as well, where traffic's a nightmare. And we let that anger us, right? Even though we know, and we set it up ourselves, if we choose to live an hour from where we work, in that hour is going to be traffic. Yet for some reason we're angry about it and we're upset about it and it ruins our day. Instead of saying, hey, if I choose to live this far away, this is going to be something I have to deal with. And I can choose how I deal with it. And I love that in Costa Rica, they choose to deal with traffic with happiness and waving and gracias. And it was just amazing to see. Now, I don't tell you that I love sitting in the traffic because I don't like it, and it feels like a waste of my time, but it was something we signed up for when we decided we wanted to travel around the country. The third one that I want to share with you is the realization that I came to in our second week down there in the remote jungle, and that is the best wake-up alarm in the world is a howler monkey. These little things are, I think they're like 2 feet tall maybe. They're small little monkeys that live in the trees. They're only active 45 minutes a day because they eat a very poor nutritional diet that's very low in energy because it's just leaves from the trees. So they're busy, and then they take naps, and they sit in the trees and eat. But about 5 o'clock every morning, they let out the loudest roar I've ever heard in my life. The first night Andrea and I were there, we stayed in a house that had no walls and no doors. So the only protection we had from Mother Nature, was the mosquito net over the bed. Now, I'm not going to tell you I was super pumped when Andrea told me she booked that place, but looking back on our month, it was definitely one of my favorites because we were truly immersed in nature. So about 5 o'clock, the alpha males of the howlers start letting out this loud roar, and it first starts off like thunder, kind of coming up to a crescendo, and then it ends with what sounds like you would swear lions coming into your house. They are so loud. And the first night we were there, it scared the hell out of us. I remember us both laying in bed about 5 o'clock, wondering what we had gotten ourselves into for a week. And we laid there and we're like, what's going to happen? Like, are they raiding the food downstairs? Are they tearing up the house? We had no idea. So it goes on for about a half hour or so every morning, and then later in the evenings. And so after that first day, when it stops, we slowly walk downstairs to get ready to make coffee, and nothing. The house is fine. We look up in the trees, and there's these little black monkeys, and you can tell the howlers. Sorry, microphone fell apart there. You can tell the howlers because they have a spot on their tail where they don't have any fur. It's just their skin because they use it to grab the tree, and they'll just hang by their tail and let all their legs go to reach leaves. But they were up in the trees just eating and swinging around and doing monkey stuff. So for that week, it quickly became our routine that they woke us up, and then we went downstairs and sat and watched them do their stuff. And I tell you, having been back in the States now, I think like a week or so, I still have dreams about them, and that is definitely a wake-up call I miss. And it made me think about when I come back here, trying to be more in touch with the nature that is around me when I can, and see if there aren't natural wake-up calls that occur in my daily environment here as well. And being that immersed in nature for a week, you really get into the rhythms. You go to bed when it gets dark, you get up when it's light. And it's something that kind of want to bring back to my life here, is being more purposeful and intentional, like listening to what's around me and enjoying the ebbs and flows of the natural environment instead of artificially, using lights to, just changing it, right? Like, I think so many times we control nature here in the States versus living alongside of it. And that was something I really learned in Costa Rica. All right, the fourth thing I want to tell you about is, this one blew my mind. I'm not going to lie. I love coffee, and it's something I unintentionally consumed way more of than I should have. And I say consumed because it's kind of that what I'm about to tell you now has kind of led to a change in my life and some of my habits. So when we went to Costa Rica, I know it's a big coffee growing region, and one of the things we wanted to do was visit a local coffee farm, preferably someone that was organic and used permaculture principles, not because I knew anything about permaculture, but because my wife told me it was super important and good for the earth. So I thought, well, if it has coffee, I'll go listen to it. So we ended up booking a trip to El Toledo Coffee Farm outside of Tines, Costa Rica. And the lessons we learned there are still something I'm processing. and that was our first week down there. So it's been over a month since I met Gabriel and his family at the farm, and I'm still thinking through what he told me. And he started off his presentation. In my mind, I'm going to a coffee farm, so I'm going to get told why their coffee is the best and we should buy more coffee. And I'm anticipating a very, very salesy approach to here's how we grow our coffee, blah, blah, buy some coffee. And that is not at all what happened. Gabriel posed a question to us towards the beginning of his presentation of when is enough enough? And, I was like, think about it. When is enough enough? And he started talking to us about coffee and how much waste is created in the production of coffee, and how coffee beans are actually from a berry, which is very similar to a grape, which just becomes a byproduct when they're crushed to pull the seeds out. And he started talking to us about the benefits of the berry and the benefits of using the whole plant and planting not just coffee everywhere, but coffee plants that can subside or survive with other plants nearby. So he had tangerine trees and banana trees and coffee, and it all grew not in rows like we see in traditional farms here, but it grew naturally. And it allowed one plant to help another plant thrive, and what disease takes out one plant, the other plant will take care of. So it was literally nature working together in a cooperative farm. And we listened to him talk, and he shared with us how they were trying to use the berries to create coffee wine so they could reduce the waste and not use as much water to process coffee. And then they made us coffee. And I watched them make it, and they use this, I call it the Costa Rican coffee sock. It's a little filter made out of, I think it's like a cotton. And you put your beans in, and you slowly pour the water, and it goes down into the cup or your container, whatever you're going to store your coffee in for the day, the drink out of. And it's a very slow process. I watched his wife make it, and she would slowly pour the water, and it would drip through, and he would keep talking, and then she would slowly pour more, and it drip through, and it was way slower than how I made coffee here, right? Press a button, boil some water, pour it in, boom, it's good. There it was very purposeful. And as we went through the talk and stuff, he circled back to when is enough enough? When is enough money enough money? When is enough of a house enough of a house? When is enough land enough land? When is enough coffee enough coffee? And I started thinking, he asked, how much coffee do you drink? And in my head, I'm like, whoa, I drink way more than I should have. It was definitely a really excessive habit I picked up through COVID and just being idle, as I was drinking lots of coffee a day. And then he's asking, where does that coffee come from? And how are those farmers being paid? And all these really deep questions that I was not prepared for. And it got me thinking, I don't know. I literally don't know where my coffee comes from. And I don't know how much water it takes to make this coffee. And I don't know why I drink 15 cups a day. And I was blown away as when is enough enough. And what I really loved about him is he was sharing that, yes, he's in the coffee business. And yes, he makes his money off coffee. But what he's really trying to do is teach his kids and all the people that come to him and go through these tours is that there's value in farming. There's value in knowing where your stuff comes from and growing it locally. And he's fighting. He's a family-owned farm, inherited it from his grandfather to his dad, now to him. He's fighting to teach his kids that farming is a noble way of life, and that if you don't know where your food comes from and you're not capable of growing it, you're depending on somebody else all the time. And he was honestly fearful that his kids would believe the message that you don't want to work on a farm because you're going to be poor the rest of your life. You have to go to college and move to the city. And I thought, man, the only way I can help him share that message to his kids and help other farmers make sure that their children know farming is a noble way of life and that we all need to know where our food comes from is starting to support those who grow my food, and which means I got to slow down and maybe skip the supermarket and go to the farmer's market so I can see who's growing the food. And that means I eat what's grown near me so it doesn't have to be shipped across the world. And how much more would I enjoy what I'm eating if I knew that relationship? How much less would I consume if I knew what it took to make it? And for me, that's really kind of why I said consumed coffee, because ever since, well, I'll share this story with you. So I got a coffee sock, and it was at all the places we stayed, and I tried to make it like I saw her make it, but first thing I realized is I wasn't patient enough, because I literally put the coffee in, filled it with water, and thought it was done, and I made like a very mild, awful tea the first time, because you're supposed to enjoy the process of making the coffee, which is a slow pour and let it go through the beans, right? And it's a process so that when you drink that coffee, you appreciate the work that the farmer put into growing it, and the processor put into processing it, and the roaster to roasting it, and now you to drinking it. And I really thought, like, that is a lesson I needed in my life, because I was doing so much so fast just to get it done. Whether it was drinking a cup of coffee, boom, drink a cup of coffee. Why did I drink that cup of coffee? I don't know. It's a habit, but I didn't even enjoy it. Or why did I do this task in life? I don't know. It's just something I do, but I didn't enjoy it. Versus really slowing down. And now I can tell you that it's been hard, but since we've been back to Costa Rica, I limit myself to 3 cups of coffee a day, and I try to enjoy them, and it's been pretty cool, man. Like, this is like my 6th day back or whatever, and I think I just finished the final cup, and it's halfway through the day, so it's definitely a much more slower, enjoyable process of coffee. And I think I ask you guys to look at your life, and where are you rushing through and doing things without really giving it conscious thought, and thinking not only of what it means to you in your life, but what does it mean to the lives of those you can support around you. And I thank Gabriel for that message. It definitely was not what I was expecting there. And if you guys get a chance to go to Costa Rica, one of the places I would definitely tell you to go hit is El Toledo Coffee Farm. You can check them out online. They're a good, solid group of people, and something that I really learned a lot from. And the last thing I want to share with you, the final lesson I learned from my time in Costa Rica, is something called Pura Vida. It can be a greeting. It can be a closure. So I can say Pura Vida to you as we leave. I can say Pura Vida to you as I find you or meet you. And it is more than a saying. It's a way of life. And it's the essence of how Costa Ricans live their life, and something that I am going to spend a lot of time trying to figure out, how do I bring that to my life wherever I'm at, not just in one area. Pura Vida means pure life, right? It means shopping and spending their money locally, spending time with family and friends because they live in the same communities or walking by each other all the time. Something as simple as walking to the store instead of driving allows them to stop and have conversations with other people that they meet along the way, not just get to the destination, do their business, jump in the car, and go again. Right? It allows them, the Pura Vida allows them to stay connected to the world right around them, the nature, the tempos of nature. Like, I was amazed at how many of their fences were just made out of nature, right? Their fences were from trees. And all around them, they were growing stuff. And now I know in this, where we're at, we have a different climate. We can't grow all the time. But I think there's so many times that we're out of touch with nature. Like, we don't even pay attention to what nature's trying to tell us. And down there, they are so immersed, and it's so jungle-ish. It's such a small country that they have to live within nature and the cycles of it. So Pura Vida means taking care of the earth and appreciating all the life it provides. Right, appreciating your connection to it and how it becomes you through what you drink, through what you eat, through what you breathe, and you in turn give it back. It becomes you based on what you return to it, whether it's clean products, wastewater, whatever the case may be. Pura Vida is happiness. It's pure, and it's light. You can't say Pura Vida and not smile. Like, try it. Even if I'm saying it wrong, like, I'm not the best at it, but you can't do it, right? Like, anytime somebody say Pura Vida, you say Pura Vida back, and you're both smiling. Because it's just happiness, and it's how they live their lives every day. And it's like a very light energy. If we're big into these energy exchanges, a Pura Vida person is not bringing heavy, dark energy to you. They're light. They're happy. They're on their feet. They're moving. They're physically active. So one of the challenges I want to throw out to myself and to you as a community is, how do we make sure that where we're showing up, and we're going to do another episode here in a couple weeks on the energy exchange and how every interaction we have is an energy exchange. How do we ensure that we're showing up light and happy and full of pura vida, full of life, pure life, energetic life? So that in turn, we can help other people share that life with their friends and their communities. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This is 5 lessons I learned in Costa Rica, and I will go back and tell you guys, never underestimate the power of travel and of truly committing to learn from what's around you. You can do that whether you travel to the next town, the next farm. Shopping locally is going to be a huge thing for Andrea and I as we continue in 2022, and really slowing down my consumption to make sure that what I consume is something, one, I need, and two, that it brings me joy, not just mindfully doing it. So I hope you consume this podcast because it is something you need and it brings you joy, and we are blessed to have you here each and every week. So I thank you all. If you want to help support us and continue helping us grow, join us over on Patreon, where your money can support your cause. It's near and dear to your heart, and we would appreciate it gratefully. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.